Today's my co-host, Ryan Janot. Ryan, how are you today?
I'm doing great. I feel like I've been having a lot of deja vu lately, more recently than not. But I'm doing wonderful.
Groundhog Day.
Yeah, had a great weekend. Got some sun, some sand, and enjoyed watching my son play during a soccer tournament this weekend. So, but
Awesome.
as I think we've talked about this before, I'm excited, but also at the same time a little nervous that you think I'm getting a little boring because now we're starting to introduce new people into it, into our podcast, which is always exciting, keeps it a little bit fresh. It may feel like we've said this 3 times before, but we're gonna go forward with this.
It sounds like we need marriage counseling now, Ryan.
Is that what I'm here for?
There you go. To add a little spice to the relationship. That's what you're here for. So you heard, you can see him now. We do have a special guest joining us today. Also a special announcement for TVH as Eric Petersen has joined TVH Financial and part of TVH Group as a private wealth advisor. And that we did send an announcement earlier today to our client base as well with the introduction. So Eric, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jim. Thanks for the warm welcome. Ryan as well. Yeah, I'm excited for it. This has been a long time coming, and I finally feel I'm at a place that I've been looking for the last 15 years. So.
Oh yeah, well, awesome. That's good to know. So today we're going to talk about your roots. I mean, the title is From Farm Roots to Financial Futures. So we're going to talk a little bit about your history, your career path, ultimately how you ended up becoming an advisor, and then in terms of what led you to join us as a group as well. So, Eric, where would you like to start? I mean, let's first let people know that you are based in Edmonton, Alberta, right?
Yeah.
So, as joining the team, you're not local to us, and but you and I have met as well, and have talked throughout the years. And I think finally earlier this year, when I was in Edmonton, that was probably our first in-person meeting, right?
Yeah. Virtually, I feel like I've known you forever, but
Exactly,
that was our first in real life interaction.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get started and let's find out about Eric and who Eric is.
Yeah, well, I've been in the industry since 2007. Before that, I was involved in heavy road construction. And to go all the way back to the beginning, I grew up here in Alberta. I'm one of the few people in Alberta that's born and raised in Alberta. Right. We have a lot of transplants, especially from Toronto. We especially love the people from the East. But it's been, so I grew up on a farm, and the thing that I've carried from my upbringing into my current work life is the whole concept of having to do a lot of hard work to reap an exceptional reward. And whether that's the chickens that I was exposed to raising, or any real moment you have to play out a long process like that, you learn that really all of the work that you do beforehand leads up to paying off in the end. And very much in the financial world, that's really been the parallel from my upbringing that leads a lot of my advice to my clients today.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because when Ryan joined me, I'd always say to him, you need to plant seeds, and eventually those seeds will start to come the harvest, right? And it takes time and perseverance and patience and all those wonderful things, right? But that's literally what you have to do.
Yeah. And really, as I left the farm, I one thing I knew I didn't want to do. We had chickens and we had goats. I knew I didn't want to be involved with goats anymore. Right. They were pretty brutal animals. The billy goats in particular, if you turned your back on them, they would hit you like a freight train. And so when I was like 8 or 9 years old, I learned this. And as soon as I would walk into the pen, I would go grab one billy goat by the horns. We had 2. I'd grab the other one billy goat by a horn, and I would drag them around with me everywhere I'd go in the pen until I was done, and then I would let go. Because, if you let your guard down for a second, they'll get you. Right. That's a good financial thing to learn as well.
Don't turn your back on a goat.
Yeah. But no, from there, I went into the family business and spent a lot of time really working from the ground up. I got all the dirty jobs, and then to the point where I was a shareholder. And in 2007, we were fighting with the labor from the oil field here in Alberta, and really, like they were paying twice what we could afford to pay our people, and we were paying them like $250, $300 a day. But they could go and get $500 a day if they could fog a mirror in the oil field. And so we had an opportunity to sell everything to one of our biggest clients, and that didn't turn out a place that I wanted to stay in. And really, I was kind of directionless for about 6 months, and it was good because I wanted a break. I needed a break. We spent really an entire 6 months of, between 14 to 20 hours a day throughout the summer. And so while I was kind of kicking back, relaxing, I started to think of what I wanted to do next. And I really had no idea. But my parents' advisor was talking to my mom one day and said, well, you should have him give me a call. And so I decided to give him a ring just to see what this was all about. And his specialty was insurance planning, estate planning, and then also he did a lot of exempt market or private equity investments.
Right.
And after talking to him for about 15 minutes, I said, you know what? This is all of the business challenge that I enjoyed from being a business owner. This is all of the people part of what I enjoy, the social aspect of being in business. I mean, we had 50, 60 employees, a lot of them seasonal, and the camaraderie, the interaction was a big part of what I enjoyed. Mm-hmm. And when I realized that I could get the business challenge and the camaraderie, the social aspect, without having to deal with labor problems and equipment problems and weather problems and all of the challenges that came with that, I just said, yeah, this is what's for me. And I've never looked back. I kind of have a few times kind of reviewed my life, and I think back to how I never would have gotten into this industry any other way. I didn't even really know it existed from where I had come from. Right. But looking back, there's nothing else I would rather be doing. It's such a rewarding and interesting career to be in.
And what year did you start in the industry?
I was in 2007. So yeah,
it was 2007. So right before the market crash.
Yeah. So
perfect timing.
It was, and you say that it really was, because I learned really quickly that no advice is infallible. And so managing risk and being honest with risk was paramount, because, being a year in and getting, the rug pulled out from under you when you hardly know what you're doing anyways, it was a phenomenal learning experience for me to be able to walk away and say, okay, I need to make sure my clients understand every ounce of risk for what they're getting into. Yeah. And if I do that well, then moments like this won't matter. It'll be a conversation rather than sorry, I told you one thing and you got another.
Yeah. Well, there's some parallels, because I started in the financial services industry in '89 as a banker. But when I became an independent, it was about 6 months to the lead up of the dot bubble that burst. The tech bubble that burst, sorry. So the Nortels and whatever else. And it was difficult for me to gain any traction initially, because I didn't believe in that style of investing, right? In chasing those returns. I was more of a Warren Buffett style investor and in value investing. And back then people looked at value investing as like, what are you doing? Like, that's so old fashioned. And guess what? Like, then the bubble burst and I stepped right and did really well as a result, because I kept to the philosophy. And so very similar to your experience. And then TVH Group was actually founded in October the 3rd of 2008. That's when we officially launched and took possession of our first office space, which we purchased back then, right? And then, Ryan, you started in the industry in April of 2019, literally about a year away from COVID, right? So it's funny how we have parallels in terms of the timing of when we got into it. Actually worked in our favor, right, in many ways. So now, did you get into the business right into the insurance and the planning side? Were you doing mutual funds? Were you doing private investments back then? Like what was initially the source of products that you were offering?
Yeah, so initially I focused on insurance and the private equity market.
Okay.
The insurance in particular, I really had a lot of going back to a lot of the connections I had in the heavy construction industry. It really set my career off well getting into the disability market, because a lot of people's plans weren't very thorough, especially for people who were seasonal.
Yeah.
And so really the first year of my career was probably 60% disability. And I've been told that's very rare, but I found it very easy to help people understand how it would benefit. And I mean, the nice thing is if they break their leg while snowboarding and they don't have it, they get covered with WCB and maybe a bit through their plan if they have one. But if they have a disability plan, well, it doesn't matter. It was so easy at that point to say, this is a protection that gives you protection beyond what WCB is going to give you, which to a lot of people in the heavy construction industry really gave them confidence that they didn't have any other way. I mean, everyone has a nightmare story about trying to claim WCB, and this just absolves that problem altogether.
Right. So, in terms of your philosophy and approach now and working with a client, what is your approach when it comes to financial planning and walking a client through that process? Do you believe that every client should be introduced to that process? Is it just for some people? And then when you do walk them through, do you believe it's something that you continue on doing for the client? Because I know there are a lot of advisors who may set up a plan and then they kind of forget about it for 5 years until the client finds a new advisor and starts another plan with them, right? So maybe walk us through your approach there.
Yeah, that's a good question. Really, I always like to focus with to begin with the plan before all other things, because the plan really does dictate how you invest, what kind of risks you take when you invest, or what kind of risks you try to avoid when you invest. What I do find though is that some people just want the simple math of how much do I need to be saving to get to retirement, which
Right.
is a few minute process. And so I would always start there. And I have what I called 3 levels of financial planning. The first one was
Okay.
that really simple assessment. I could do it on a napkin really, but I do have a fancy spreadsheet that lets me plug a few numbers, gives them tables with information they need. But that really helps them to say, okay, well, to get where I want to be at age 65 or 55, I need to save X amount a month.
Right.
And 95% of the time, I think that's people's biggest concern is, am I on track? And that's really just a quick way to, going back to the farm reference, to pull the dipstick on the engine and make sure your oil level's okay.
Yeah.
It's a very fast way to do it. The second step was moving into a more detailed plan where I would really start to factor in other things like, when are they going to sell their house and downsize? Or do they have a business? And when it comes time to sell, how are they going to deal with those assets? Or what kind of tax questions are they going to have at that time? And how can they plan effectively 20 years ahead or 10 years ahead so that when they get there, they've already pre-made a lot of the decisions? And then the third level would be to go to the high level financial planning, where you use some kind of quite in-depth software. And I understand you guys use Planworth, which is a good example of that, which can really handle probably 99.9% of cases it can solve.
And I guess with your prior careers, like planning was very important. I mean, being a farmer, there's a lot of planning, right? Because you're planning your crop or whatever it is for the season, right? In your case, raising of the chickens, and so there's a lot of planning involved there. And then in the construction side, you were building roads, right? So
Yeah.
it's not like you just showed up with a bunch of machines and some tar and laid road. Like there was a lot of planning involved there as well, right?
Yeah. And we were a kind of a niche in the final part of the road building. We weren't actually laying the asphalt, but
Okay.
the equipment we had was very finicky, and it had 30 to 40 different individual systems. And if one of those systems wasn't working, the whole machine wouldn't work.
Wow.
And so it comes down to really the maintenance, doing the right things at the right time, even if you don't know if a certain thing is going to break down in the future. You still give it all of the attention it needs to be where it needs to be when things do come and throw a wrench into your plan. And that's I think the parallel back into the financial world. If there's all kinds of things we can do to prepare, that's why people bring us in as advisors, because we are paid to think about all of those questions. Yeah. And then 5 years or 10 years down the road, when a business owner goes to sell their property and all of a sudden, there's some tax thing that they didn't know about, those are the things that I like to make sure I'm helping my clients with, so that they're prepared for those days. So a little bit of effort today saves a monumental amount of effort 5-10 years down the road.
Yeah, so a lot of that experience kind of has translated or transferred over to you being the advisor to your clients, right? Like it's who you are as a person. It's not just this is what I should, or that's who you are as a person, personality wise, right? And so okay, that's great. That's good.
Yeah.
Ryan, do you have any questions for Eric? I know you've been sitting there and maybe feeling a little bit sad that I'm adding somebody else to the team, thinking, that I'm bored of you, but that's not the case.
No, I'm excited because it's teaching me a lot more about Eric, because you and I have only known each other, say 6 to 8 weeks, really, and we haven't had a whole lot of time to get to know. So I'm really being a passenger a lot of it, but I know, as I said to Eric at one point, is I'll drill him with some questions at some point. But you've talked a lot about the diverse background that you've had with different jobs, and I can speak about my experience very briefly, which is like, a lot of banker type roles. People come into the banking role because they have a family member or something like that, and they stay within that career. But you and I have had very different backgrounds, which allows us to pull from different experiences to really create a great relationship with our clients and be able to speak to many different things. I guess my question is, how has that kind of shaped you, and how has that really helped you when working with clients?
That's a good question, and kind of a tough question, because it goes quite deep. But I feel like the things, the differences that we all have, when you look at especially Canada as a country, or Alberta or Ontario or any other province as a province, it's really our diversities that help us be thorough. It's seeing things from perspectives that, like you've had life experiences that I haven't had, and bringing that together into our pool of expertise. Now I have a fresh set of eyes to look for things that I might not see. And that's one thing I've always been clear to my clients. I do my best every moment of every day, but I also can never know everything. And one of the things my clients have appreciated is there's times that I've said, I don't have that answer, but I'll go and get it for you. And I feel that now, when we have that bigger pool of people here with different backgrounds, different areas of expertise, different senses of humor, really it just brings a lot more diversity to the conversation, and helps give more depth to what it is that I'm able to offer to my clients.
Yeah, I've seen that evolve throughout the years with the partnership and TVH Group, right? Because when I started, I was a lone wolf. I worked as an associate advisor with somebody else, but eventually, when I went on my own, I only saw things a certain way. And then I partnered up with John and eventually added Sonia and David. And, we would sit down having lunch. We'd be at the boardroom and I would talk about a client situation. And it was amazing how, again, John would share his perspective on the situation, or Sonia would hers, or Dave would his, right? And many times I'd be there and think to myself, yeah, you know what? I've never thought about that. I've never considered that. And many times now, when I create plans for my clients, I usually create kind of like a rough draft of it, and I sit on it for 24, 48 hours, because sure enough, I'll have a conversation with somebody, or I'll be driving somewhere and something will come up where I'm like, aha, that's what I really need to do. Like, that's a better solution, right? And then, as when I added Ryan to the team, many times Ryan and I are working on cases together, and we're sharing our perspective on that situation. And then we added Denis, and now with you, like it's amazing how a client can come work at TVH Group with one of the individuals, but really they're getting a lot of expertise behind that individual to provide them with, not, I can't say the ultimate solution, but probably the best solution possible, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, I just very briefly to add to that is like we're having worked within an industry that advisors, I've run into many advisors that feel like they know everything, and that's probably one of the worst things now looking back on it, to see and think you can't know everything because the industry is constantly changing. And as both of you guys have kind of pointed out, that idea of being able to work with a team and no longer a lone wolf, Jim, that you really get to pull different ideas, or hey, if you miss something or overlook something, that's where that team mentality comes in, and it's really great to be able to bounce ideas off of. Every individual's situation is different, and
Yeah.
there are institutions that cookie cutter us into one type of form, and this is the TVH way of doing things is different because of that team mentality. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's gonna. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
I was going to say, I alluded to it at the beginning, how I've been looking for this for 15 years. When I started, there was about 10 of us that all started about the same time. And for the first 2 years, none of us knew anything about the business. We were all like coming from completely new areas of, it was coming to a completely new area for all of us. But just sitting down with 3 or 4 of the other people when you had a problem and talking it through, yeah, it was phenomenal. Even though we hardly knew anything, we could always come to a good solution. And that's what I'm saying when I say I've been looking for this for 15 years. I want that depth, and it's not even necessarily a depth of expertise, it's a depth of experience. It's, this is my problem, and someone can look at a problem even if they don't completely understand it or have never or have seen it before. There's so much more depth that you get when you have people you can discuss things with. And yeah.
I mean, it's one of the reasons why we do our team meetings on Mondays. Like, we definitely go through all the appointments and the people we've been talking to. And sometimes I know, Ryan, you would say, "Hey, I really need help with this situation, and can I spend some time with you guys, with the advisory team, right, on finding a solution?" And we will each have our own opinion on how things should be done. But then, Ryan, you'll basically take the best of each one, right,
Mhm.
and put it together into, again, what we say is, potentially the ultimate plan for the client. So that's definitely beneficial. So, Eric, you and I, again, we know each other through. So you're a private wealth advisor. I'm a private wealth advisor. So from a disclosure point of view, we're both with Raintree Financial Solutions, and they are based in Edmonton, Alberta. And they are our exempt market dealer that offers the private investments, and also our portfolio management solutions are offered through Raintree as well. You and I connected because we were part of. I mean, I think it was during COVID, it all started, where there was this disconnect amongst advisors across the country, where we joined a group with some other Raintree advisors, and it was just more about sharing ideas, talking about some of the challenges maybe that we had, and looking for some assistance. And then last year, I think I reached out to you because I was looking at making some changes in the business, and that's where I found out you were no longer part of a team, and I had just said, if you're interested, give me a call, and I don't know what that would look like, and you gave me a call earlier this year, and you joined us. So I think people would like to know, probably mostly your clients, why did you choose to join us at TVH?
Yeah, partnerships of any sort are difficult and a lot of work, and not because I think people are difficult, although I do tell people I've made myself unemployable. You spoil yourself so much with a certain processes and everything, it's hard. I would have a challenge time fitting in working somewhere. But that being said, choosing partners is a very difficult process. But the criteria I had is I did want to focus more on investments. I really enjoyed investments more than I enjoy insurance. Insurance is great because it's one of the few things we do where you do have guarantees involved.
Right.
And to bring that security to a client's life, I've never been able to just say, yeah, I'm not going to do insurance anymore, because it does bring such a stabilizing force in someone's financial plan.
Yeah.
That being said, I wanted to find someone who had, a good depth of insurance, someone who had more than what I'm able to even offer, because I do like the things that it can do for a client when it's structured right and it's done creatively. I wanted to also find a team that had people that I could feel that camaraderie enough to be able to say, hey guys, I have a problem. This is the problem. Can you give me some feedback, and really have that collaborative approach again? So that was the second big thing. And then the third one, when you invited me, Jim, to come and meet the team in a team meeting, it honestly, it felt, and this is cliche, maybe this is the farmer in me, but it felt like home. I felt like we were just sitting around the dinner table, joking around, having a good time, talking about important things, but keeping it light at the same time. And yeah, I really did enjoy the personalities that are on the team in general, and so those really were what led me to say, yeah, you know what, like, we just need to get this off the ground and get moving with it. So
right. See, Ryan, I told you he likes you.
And not replace, just lighten the load.
Exactly.
I can distract Jim while you go relax.
There you go. Well, and what I will say is this, is that I wasn't really looking at actively building a team necessarily. And then when I started to have that thought as part of the business plan, it wasn't from advertising. Like, for me, it was always the right people will just show up, right, where there will be a fit. I'll go back to the launch of TVH Group, which I've shared a few times. John and I are the original founders. The way that John and I connected was I was doing some Smith maneuver strategies, working with another mortgage agent who ultimately became sick and was out of the business. A mutual friend of ours, John's and mine, suggested, hey, you should talk to my friend John. He does mortgages and he knows the Smith maneuver. And at first I'm like, nah, I'm not going to worry about it. And then eventually, I had a coffee with him at a Tim Hortons in Markham, Ontario. And that led to, maybe we should kind of, get married to each other from a business point of view and buy our first location and turn this into a business, right? That just came, it was just the right person presented themselves. Sonia, she was actually a client of John's and mine, and we were looking to add a lawyer, and she was just perfect fit, personality wise and whatever else. And that just happened to work out. It wasn't, again, we were actively promoting it or advertising. It was just as the right people came aboard, that's what we would do. And Ryan, that's how you came aboard as well, right? There was an introduction, not that I was looking for anybody at the time. And then when I was ready, I thought, that Ryan guy, I really liked him, and very trustworthy. And, so I'm going to have a chat with him. And you and I, we probably discussed this over a 3-month period, and ultimately you joined. And Eric, it was the same thing with you. It wasn't that I was actively looking for anybody, but you and I had communicated. I trust you. You're like, when I've asked other people who know you, and I've asked, tell me more about Eric, right? Every single person, and I'm being honest with you, Eric, would say to me, he's a really good person. He's trustworthy. You can trust him. And that to me was very important, right? So I'm just a believer that the right people just show up at the right time. And you happen to show up at the right time as well in joining us. So I'm definitely glad that you're a part of the team. Unfortunately, there's a bit of a distance, right? So we're going to be doing this virtually as best we possibly can. But, I will say when you asked me about our office location opening up, for example, and you asked if we were going to have an event, and I said, yeah, probably at some point. And you said, well, I'd like to be there for that. I wasn't expecting that, but I remember walking away saying to Carol, like, wow, he just offered to fly all the way out here for the office grand opening, whenever that is. Right. And I'm like, that touched me, So I think this is going to be a great relationship, a perfect fit moving forward.
I agree. I appreciate your kind words.
Yeah. And Ryan, you were going to say something too.
Oh, I was just saying, look at us, a bunch of lone wolves coming together and forming a pack.
All right. So who's done that? What's the movie with Stallone and he gets together with all the old adventure
the Expendables.
The Expendables.
Yeah, we're the Expendables. Maybe is that what we?
Yeah. We don't fit in anywhere else, so that's what makes us fit in together.
That's exactly it.
Definitely not that other movie, the one with the wolf pack lone. One takes care in Vegas. I can't remember what it's called.
I don't know. All right. So Eric, what really excites you about this new chapter and in working with TVH? How does it excite you? How do you think it's going to benefit your clients as well?
Well, I think how it excites me is also how it will benefit my clients, and that's that I don't have to try to be an expert in anything or in everything anymore, because really that was the challenge. As you both know, our requirements for expertise has just been increasing, over and over again. It seems like it doubles every year now. And trying to be the expert in insurance and the expert in investments, and then also trying to bring in the portfolio manager side of that. I felt myself, even from the day I started in the industry, I felt stretched a little thin, and it's only been getting worse. And so this will allow me to silo my expertise into the private equity and I'll throw a spoiler out here too. I am pursuing my portfolio manager designation. But at the same time, it was so hard to be involved with a client and see a need they had for insurance and not also focus on that. And so I think the biggest benefit for both me and for my clients is going to be that I now have experts to be able to come in that I know will do as good of a job, if not better than I would, to take care of those things while I can focus on my area of expertise. So I think that's really the key, is that I can now start to silo my energy and my expertise into really one thing and focus on making sure I stay at the top of my game in that respect.
Yeah, and I think from a foundation point of view, all of us were going to be working off of the same financial planning program, Planworth, which will make it easier, again, for us to work on behalf of our clients. In terms of trying to define roles, I mean, there are certain registrations that we have to maintain, and you and I are working through that process right now. But ultimately, we'll be handling a lot of the insurance business for your clients alongside with you, right? So you'll always be in the loop because we will have access to CRM and whatever else, and we're signing again all the agreements to make all that happen and compliant. You, on the other hand, for us, will be handling a lot of our private investments, right, through the exempt market route. And eventually, when Denis decides to Denis is looking for an associate portfolio manager. So potentially you'd be coming in to assist with that, and then part of the succession plan, right? So that potentially would be your role. And obviously, just sharing information and ideas, right? Again, it's just another resource that we can tap into. And you will have a different perspective, not only because of your background, your upbringing, but even your geographical location, right? Because I mean, we've kind of joked about this, but you have said to some clients, "But do you really want to deal with those Toronto people?" Right? But those Toronto people actually have different access to resources, where we would sometimes say, "Do you really want to work with those Alberta people? They're really nice people and stuff, but they don't have access to what we have access to." And there's always kind of like that competition, right? Maybe some friendly competition, but now we'll be able to tap into the Alberta guy and say, "Hey, what do you see from your point of view in terms of what we're trying to do, and vice versa?" right?
Yeah.
And I think that'll be very important as well.
Yeah, no, completely. And friendly competition is right. The unfriendly competition is the Oilers Leafs conversation.
Yeah, it's never a good conversation. So, and as long as you send me some beautiful Alberta beef once in a while, we'll be good.
That's an easy one. We got lots.
Alrighty, so let me just see here: client impact and advice. Do you have any memorable client stories or lessons in the industry that you'd like to share? And if you don't, that's okay.
Yeah, no, probably too many. So to spare the lengthy stories, I think the biggest one, and it's not so much a story as it's happened multiple times, is just the making sure that clients understand the risks involved in investing, and really that's the conversation that I love to have when the markets are going crazy, because I know my clients understand what's happening, and as much as they might have some fear because some new things have come to light. I think my favorite story are all of the stories I've had talking with clients about those risks, the discussions we've already had, and really just reminding them of their strategies so that they can say at the end of that discussion, yeah, you know what, our strategy is sound. Let's continue on with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. As a group, Ryan and I focus on layering the risk to a client's plan. So we have a belief of having some form of permanent solution, where there's some form of cash surrender value, which is guaranteed, and it doesn't correlate to the stock market. You want to make sure it's there when you need it. And then we kind of layer on top of that some form of guaranteed income solution to make sure that your certain amount of or your income's guaranteed in retirement. And then from there, we add the portfolio management solution. And then from there, we add the private investment. So it's kind of like how we try to layer things. But we don't believe that, and this is what Ryan talked about a lot on our podcast, is how, with social media, with a lot of other advisors, they always tend to promote the one thing that's great for everybody, right? And we're definitely not believers of that whatsoever. We're like, there's so different many tools in the toolbox, and for a certain client, 5 of the tools might be great, but maybe 2 of the tools are what's appropriate for them. Like, it really all depends on the client situation. So we always bring it down to the client level. Is let's look at your specific situation and then make the recommendations. Because on the private side, I'm sure it's not everyone should have a private investment, right? Like, it's appropriate for certain people and not appropriate for others, right?
Yeah.
Would that be fair to say?
Yeah. It's definitely a diversifier, but it has to be applied. It's just like a doctor isn't going to prescribe the same drug to every person.
Exactly.
It has to fit. And so I do feel that, like, it really is a good diversifier, but I also know that not everybody needs that level or that type of diversification.
Right. Oh, I love that. Okay. So, Ryan, do you want to go through the 3 top questions that Eric believes a person should ask a financial advisor?
I love them all because it's often things that I ask people, and we've mentioned a lot of them on our podcast too. Top 3 questions to ask any financial advisor. I feel like David Letterman doing the top 10 list all of a sudden.
only not as funny, and my answers are a lot more dry.
Yeah.
Question.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Question number 1. What are your qualifications and experience? And then how do you show? How do those show? Hang on a second. I wrote that question weird. But yeah, what are your qualifications and experience? Really, that's the key, because it's important to know what your advisor brings to the table. And these are questions that I get asked the most often as well when I'm talking to a new client. And I like to explain that the reason why I connected so deeply with the private investments is I came from a business background. I understand business. I understand accounting. I understand the business plan and how deeply you have to be involved in your business to really understand all of your challenges and all of your opportunities. And so when I saw the exempt market investments or the private equity investment market, I looked at it and I said, finally, like, I finally see something I recognize. And prior to that, I had never invested in the public markets because it was just too detached. I felt like I could never know everything to make a sound decision on. I mean, you think of like Rogers, for example. I think they have 45,000 employees in Canada. Like, how on earth do you know what they're going to do tomorrow morning, or how what Trump or what Carney says tomorrow is going to affect how the markets go? But a private investment, I could see end to end.
Right.
And so when it came to qualifications, that was the thing that I really urged people to, like, find out who your advisor is, what their specialty is, and how and why that their specialty, they're good in their specialty. So that would be question one. Question two: how do you get paid, and what are the fees, costs involved in doing business with you? That's another one that I think just sneaks up on people, and if they don't understand that, there's just a lot of disappointment that can come. A quick story: I did have a client who invested into the exempt market, and Olympia Trust is a intermediary that allows people to hold these in their registered investments, like RSPs or LIRA or RESPs. And when I explained the fee system, that they have separate fees, that they're like, I don't get any cut on that, all of that detail, that was enough for them to say, okay, well, that fee is going to affect my return too much. I don't want to do it. And I was like, good, that's an important thing. And so discussing those fees up front, I think, solves a lot of potential problems down the road. And question number three: how will our relationship work, and how will you help me achieve my goals? Really, that's the key thing. If an advisor isn't moving you towards your goals, there's a lot of things they can sell you, but if those things aren't moving you towards the end, the finish line that you want to finish at, then you're going to be heading the wrong direction. So I think that's a key one to ask any advisor: is what's the end result of what you're going to do for me? Where is it going to take me? And that usually opens up questions about, okay, well, when do you want to retire? How much money are you going to need when you retire? How many years between now and then? And so, it sparks the conversations. All three of those, I think, spark really important conversations a client needs to have with an advisor.
You know what I love about that is if you actually look at our introductory PowerPoint presentation when we meet a new client and we walk them through kind of TVH group and our role and whatever else, these are actually the things that we tell them without them having to ask, right? Yeah. It's literally, here's our experience, here's our qualifications, here's how we get paid, right? And how, again, in terms of the relationship and how we work within that relationship, right? And what you can expect from us. That's in the presentation. That's in our engagement agreement as well, to let them know, like, here's what we expect from you as a client. Here's what you can expect from us as your advisor. So I love those three questions.
Yeah, it's really easy to get started with the sexy stuff. Let's talk about a specific investment, and while those are good, fun conversations to have and important ones, it's a lot better, I think, to start off with the foundational stuff, like you said, and that's excellent. I like that.
Well, and the thing too is, you're right. People want to kind of get into when we talk about the process, and Ryan and I will tell people the heavy lifting is going to be over the next 2 months, right? That's when you're going to need that heavy lifting taken care of. Once it's complete, then it's easy. It's smooth sailing from there. Some clients don't want to do the heavy lifting, and they kind of want to get right into it, and that has never worked out, right? And that's why we keep insisting, if you want to work with us, we have a process as professionals. This is the process that we walk our clients through to ensure, to your point, Eric, that not only do we identify what those goals are, because a lot of people don't. Like, let's talk about retirement, for example, and you ask a client about retirement. Yeah, I want to retire maybe at age 60. I don't know how much I'm going to need. It's like this journey that they're going on. And you're a traveler, Eric. I mean, you're a mountaineer, right? You do are you a mountaineer or backcountry mountain?
Mountaineer would probably be right. I carry an ice axe, and so that makes me official.
but again, there's a plan, right? And if you're looking at tackling those mountains, you want to make sure that there's a plan. You have your mapping and navigation, whatever, so you know where you have to get to, and how you're going to get there. Right, there has to be a path you have to follow.
Yeah.
Retirement planning is no different, and I find most people, they know what the destination is. They really have no idea how they're going to get there, right? And they really don't know what a lot of the potential roadblocks are going to be, and whatever else, right? So that's why we say to people is, let's map it out. So then and then let's make sure that we're on track. Like if you have to get to point B within 3 days, check in every single day to make sure that you're on target to reach that location on time, right? And if you're going to be late, at least understand you're going to be late and what adjustments do you have to make. And if you're going to be early, again, do you need to make any adjustments? That's retirement planning, right? Is constantly making those adjustments along the way. So
the mountaineering analogy is a good one. What I find in retirement planning, a lot of people, when I ask them how much they're going to need at retirement, they're like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'd say, well, like let's start with what you're doing now. Let's take out all your debt payments, because we'll assume you're not going to have any debt in retirement. How much do you spend? How much more would you need to go on a trip? And a lot of times that number ends up being a bit of a stab in the dark. And mountaineering is kind of the same. You say, okay, well, look at we'll kind of try to go up that way. Well, when you get up there, a whole new landscape is revealed to you. And you have to totally more often than not, rewrite your entire route. And it's the same thing with that number. Then a year later, when you sit down with them, they're like, yeah, no, actually, I've been thinking about it. And I also want to be able to golf 3 times a week. I didn't even think about that. So that's going to be, and they add all of it in. So they said, well, the $6,000 a month I thought I was going to need, I'm now going to need closer to 8. And if I want to fly a few places a year, well, maybe let's make it 10. And all of a sudden they have relativity. And that's what a lot of people are afraid to get into starting, is because they don't have relativity. You get in, well, I could say it's $2,000 a month, or I could say it's $20,000 a month. I don't know what I'm going to need. Well, until you start thinking about it, and we make a number real, that's when it starts to form. And by the second or third year, my clients know exactly what it is they're going to need. And it is going to change in the future too. Yeah. But at least at that point now, they've clarified their goal and they understand what that end needs to look like. And so as things change, as curveballs get thrown, they can adapt to those new challenges, and they have that relativity they need to be able to say, yeah, I know exactly what I want when I get there. Now, that's what they want is likely going to change, but but that's okay.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're approaching the 1 hour mark. So I think, Ryan, I'm going to have you handle the rapid fire round.
Oh, yeah. I wrote okay, we're going to go super rapid fire. So, and there's some other questions I'm sure you've seen, but coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Early bird or night owl?
Both. Can I say both?
Sure.
So you drink lots of coffee.
Yeah.
Favorite holiday destination?
Oh, the mountains.
Dream superpower?
Oh, fly. Oh, I would love to fly.
Favorite time of year, season?
Winter.
Cats or dogs?
Oh, dogs, because they give you more affection.
All right. Your go-to karaoke song?
Oh, karaoke song. I haven't done karaoke in forever. Would have to be Sweet Caroline by Neil Diamond.
Right. I can't wait for you to come out and visit us then. Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
Favorite book?
Too many lists, but Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Probably because my dad gave me that when it was literally on bookshelves when it first came out. And that literally revolutionized how I thought about money and the role it was going to play in my life.
Yeah. I think I was 12 when I read that book for the first time. Yeah, it's a great book. Favorite podcast?
Would be Tim Ferriss. He's kind of a life hacker. And so all kinds of really interesting, from health to meditation to exercise and like building muscle to, it's just such a diverse pool of people that he brings in.
Awesome. And what's one financial myth you'd like to bust?
Oh, yeah, this is one of my favorites. The difference between renting a house and owning a house. A lot of people think that owning is better, and there are good things about owning, but it's not always the best answer. And so I'll caveat that by saying, I'm not saying don't buy real estate, but I have only ever lived in a house I've owned once because I prefer to own real estate, rent it out, because then you look at it from a business perspective. You're not afraid, or you're more afraid to say, "Oh, I'm going to spend $20,000 on a bathroom." Well, if you're living in a house you're renting, you're not going to burn that 20 grand. And if someone's renting your property, what's the 20 grand of renovating the bathroom? The bathroom's fine. So yeah, I really like to challenge people who think that owning beats renting. I mean, sometimes ownership is just a luxury someone wants to expend for, which is totally fine. But that's a completely different decision as buying a house to live in as an asset, as an investment. Yeah, again, going back to Rich Dad Poor Dad, he kind of makes the point that your house that you live in is often the biggest liability you have in your life, and appreciation can surprise you and change that. But yeah, the difference between renting and owning, that's one that I think that I really like to challenge people when they're thinking of buying a house. I always bring this up and I say, okay, well, what's the opportunity cost? So that's one that I really like to challenge people on.
Which is funny because there's an opportunity cost of renting as well, right? There's an opportunity cost on both scenarios, and yeah, we'll have to debate this one at another episode then.
Yeah, we'll bring John into the mix too, and Sonia.
Yeah. Well, then that won't be fair for Eric because it'll just
don't worry. I balance between both sides. That's not a problem.
Okay.
And to be clear, I don't advocate people not buy real estate. I just think that as soon as you move into it, it changes the nature of it, and as long as they understand how that changes it, then by all means. But I'm a hardcore opportunity cost, rent versus own. If I buy a property, I'm like, well, if I live in there and if I could rent it out for more than I can find a place to rent myself, I'm losing. And I'm very much that. If it's $1 one way or the other, I like to go. My finances dominate how I choose to live my lifestyle. So.
Right. All right. So are we done with the rapid fire?
Yeah, we are.
That's everything. All right. Well, we're at the 52-minute mark. So any final comments or thoughts, Eric, that you want to share with us?
I really just, I'm excited. The prospect of being able to focus on what I want to focus on and having people I can trust to take care of the other parts of the puzzle. I'm really, really looking forward to that.
Yeah. Ryan, anything else that you want to add?
As I alluded to earlier, don't be a lone wolf out there. For those people in particular that are trying to do it all themselves, finding a great team. Rich Dad Poor Dad talks a lot about this, about surrounding yourself with a great team that can really support you. TVH Group as a whole, TVH Financial, is here to really help people. And if you haven't experienced it, or you're not getting the right experience from your current advisor, come experience what it's like to go through a process, because I think it could be really life-changing for a lot of people. So
I couldn't have said that better myself, Ryan. So I'm very proud of you. Well, I guess what I would like to say is, Eric, I'm looking forward to having you as part of the team as well. I think we're going to be able to do a lot of great things together for our clients, on behalf of our clients. So welcome officially to the TVH family. And if anyone has any questions, reach out on our website, tvhfinancial.ca. We're going to be on all the social media platforms. So if you like what you heard and saw, we encourage you to like, subscribe, share the wealth. And, finally, I guess we should say, Eric, from compliance, and now we're dealing with compliance at the end of the episode, you're registered in the province of Alberta to do business in the province of Alberta on the exempt market side and on the insurance side. And you're also registered in Ontario as well now, correct?
And BC.
And BC for the exempt business. And I'm registered in Ontario for the exempt business, and the insurance, and currently in the process of getting registered in Alberta for the insurance side of things. And then eventually we'll have Ryan follow suit as well. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that we're working in partnership, but we all have our appropriate licensing and whatever else to make all the compliance people happy, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's it for today. Thank you for your time, and until next time, we'll see you again. Take care.
We could be awesome.